Welcome to the Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Krieger. Todd has over 35 years of experience working with thousands of couples as a licensed therapist in his private practice. Todd shares his insights on this show. It's never too early to divorce-proof your marriage or too late to heal yourselves and have the relationship you truly want.
Hi, everybody. This is Todd Krieger, and today I'm talking about attachment styles lately, and I want to talk about that again, a short little repeat, but then tie it into addictions. What is the relationship between attachment styles and addictions? Now, attachment styles, just to review, from anybody who hasn't heard me talk about it before, is the way we oftentimes have learned how to attach to our parents, our caregivers, and that follows us oftentimes, I say always, as adults in our intimate relationships and even social relationships and other kinds of relationships. And in a kind of a nutshell, if I come from a family where my parents tuned into me more times than not, in other words, that their responses were based on what I was going through. If I'm sad, they come to me and see I'm sad, maybe ask me how I'm feeling, and I tell them, and I cry, I'm a little child, or a big person, doesn't matter. And the parent holds me, and it just lets me know, basically the message is, it's okay that you're having this experience, and I am here with you, and I get you. It could be the same for excitement and happiness. If I'm happy about something, and the parents would mirror back to me that, wow, you're happy. It's good to be happy. I'm glad you're happy. I'm with you. I get that you're happy. I'll give you an example of that. Okay, so a parent takes a child to a toy store and gets them a toy. But as they're going out, you know how check stands might have little things, and this little person wants something else too. And that this young child is getting all excited. They start to go, look, I don't want that. And the parent goes, oh my God, you want that. You really do. We can't get that today because we got this, but I know you like that. Maybe some other time. And now, the child might still have a temper tantrum based on how old they are or whatever, that they didn't get that second thing. But you got that. All right? That is a simple example of tuning into the child's energy, the child's experience, inner experience. Now, if you take the same scenario, but instead the parent just stop it. Go to this toy. Let's get out of here. Okay? The message you might be giving is it's not okay to be naturally excited about something. Kid can't control that. If they see something, they get stimulated, they like it. Now, if the first experience happens much more than the second, the child is going to have a secure relationship, whether it's, again, a pleasant experience or an unpleasant experience, you're with me. And the second experience is far more than the first experience. In other words, the parent's response is based on the parent's energy, not the child's. Now, that is a lack of attunement, as we call it. Attunement is the experience of, I get you, and you get the experience that I get you. Whereas that's the misattunement. The child, don't you get, I want that toy? First one, I get you want the toy. You can't have it right now, but I know you want it. So it's not always indulging. It's not about indulging the child. And even adults in intimate relationships, they can't always solve the other person's pain or give them exactly what they want. But if we could tune into them, okay, that's attunement. If we give them the experience like, well, you get how I feel, and you accept that I have that experience. Okay, and there's a secure relationship that develops with the child and the adult, or the adult and the adult when we do that. Versus the insecure attachment when I get the sense you don't get me. more times than not. I'm kind of my own here. Or you're operating on your own needs much more. You're in your own world. And then more specifically, the two major kinds of insecure attachment that I'm going to talk about today is the anxious attachment and the avoidant attachment. And the anxious attachment is when, let's say you have a parent who's there sometimes, but really not there at other times. Maybe they have a drinking problem, or maybe there's just so much stress in their life that when things calm down, they're there. And maybe they're there pretty well, but when they're stressed or they're anxious or they're having cravings for or whatever, they're drunk, that they're not there. And so for that child, they experience like, when you don't tune into me, you're not tuning into me for a while. So you could have in a healthy, secure relationship, the parent will not always be perfectly attuned to that child. Right? So there's a misattunement. But if there's followed by a reattunement most of the time, oh man, I got so caught up in my own stuff. I was in a rush. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry I raised my voice with you. You have a right to want that. You couldn't have it, but I'm sorry for that. I love you. Okay. And if this is reattunement, and more times than not, the parent returns to respond contingent on what the child is going through, that's fine. You're going to have a secure relationship. It's not about perfection. So if a parent, it meets the needs of the child, but something comes up and they can't, and the child feels like, you don't get me. But then if unusual, or the parent comes back, or they heal it, you're going to have a secure attachment. And so if you misattune, the child doesn't go into this terrible like anxiety. But if you have the kind of parent where when you're gone, you're really gone. Then if you don't attune to me, if you don't get where I'm coming from, I feel like it's the end of the world. And in those cases, in this anxious attachment scenario, the person has a very hard time self-soothing because they grew up in a household where their brains weren't developed to self-soothe because their parent were gone. And it's scary for a young person. I'll tie this to addiction in a minute. I just want to go to the avoidance attachment stuff. The avoidance attachment, okay, that is a scenario where you really learn that when it comes to your inner world, your parent doesn't get you pretty much most of the time. Like if you grew up in a home where the father or even the mother said, stop being a little baby, just if you show some fear or something, just buck up and deal with it. Now, there is a place for bucking up. There is. Sometimes you do. You got to deal with things. You got to be courageous. You got to do things that you're scared of. And you don't want to be in a household where the parent overprotected you and indulged you. That could create anxiety as well. However, you want to, the ideal situation is to be acknowledged and say, I know you're scared. You're going to go away on this camping experience with other kids, even though you're afraid. I know you're scared. I get it. But so there's a way, again, not indulging, but acknowledging the child's experience. But if you come from a family where you're basically not tuned into, your inner world isn't tuned into, and maybe they give you food and they help you be alive and they do all kinds of great things for you, but when it comes to your inner pain, especially, you come on your own, you have this avoidant attachment style. And you can have that getting into a relationship. And to make things more complicated, you could have one kind of style, but if you're in a relationship where the environment, let's say a relationship, maybe you have a secure attachment relationship with someone who doesn't tune into you, you can develop an insecure attachment, but it also go the other way. You could be coming into an insecure attachment, but in a very enriched, intimate relationship where you learn, wow, I'm not alone. However, coming from a family where you've had some kind of insecure attachment, whether it's the anxious kind, where the parent was there or not there, or the avoidant kind, where you come on your own when it comes to the inner experience, it isn't easy to, it might take a little more risk and courage and learning and sometimes professional help so that you can enjoy the benefits of this healthier, new, intimate relationship. Where does addiction come into all this? Basically, attachment theory, which is what I'm talking about, has to do with also what we call an affect or emotional regulating theory as well. In other words, how we learn to attach, whether it's insecure or secure, is the way we regulate our emotions. So if you have an anxious attachment style, you try to regulate by being overly dependent on the other person. Prove to me I'm okay. Tell me I'm safe. Tell me you love me. Tell me you love me. And there's a lot of anxiety. And for a person that comes from a family where there's that anxious attachment style, there's anxiety. And oftentimes that person will, not oftentimes, sometimes that person will try, whether it's alcohol or another addiction, could be a behavioral addiction too. But behavioral addictions like gambling, eat food. Food is a good one for this kind of thing. Food, carbohydrates, especially comfort foods. What does that mean? It calms us down for the moment. So a person that has an anxious attachment style might run to addictions that calm them down. And that would be like, I'm thinking of food as a behavioral addiction. I'm thinking of alcohol. I'm thinking of definitely marijuana. These are drugs that are all about soothing, calming down. So that it lends itself to that. People that have the avoidant attachment style will oftentimes not be great at allowing others to soothe them because they grew up in a family where they weren't really soothed by other people. For the most part, you were on your own when it came to your own inner world. So you learn to just not count on people. And often there's a loneliness there. And so people might use alcohol on that way too to loosen them up so that they could come out more. They might use kind of, I'd say, upregulating addictions that get you going because they're more within cocaine, speed, of kinds, gambling, porn, and sex addiction. Again, it's not black and white, and people could have a porn addiction as a way to self-soothe and escape stress, but oftentimes it's also as a way to feel connected. In some ways, when people do these kind of behavioral addictions, like porn, there's a sense of I'm with you, I'm present, and I'm connected with you. I'm connected to life because they're so disconnected typically. So if alcohol can loosen people up, they're not so restricted. The cortex is depressed, so they're more out there and they're able to connect more with people. So I'm just trying to say that there is most definitely a relationship with one's attachment style, the way they regulate, and addictions. A person who's avoidant will tend to regulate by just being overly a self-soother and not letting others soothe them. So they might use an addiction that lets them come out a little bit more. The anxious attachment style, they have a hard time self-soothing, to overly relying on somebody else because of the inconsistency they grew up with. And so they might develop a relationship with, again, food or other kinds of drugs that they can rely on that will help them soothe. I find also a big addiction for people. Many people that have gambling addictions have avoidance attachment styles. So again, it's more of the up regulating ones where there gets them feeling more alive. Because when you grew up when someone didn't attune to you, there's a deadening effect. So we do things that make us feel more alive. So I hopefully it helps. I just want to explain that there is that tie. Now, again, what to do about that? There are many good things to do about that. And I work with many people to help them even deal with addictions by helping them learn healthier ways to regulate this themselves from more stress to less stress or to being more alive, feeling more alive without using their addictive choice, preference, whatever. And there are many things we could do. Many things we could do. I'll just give you one example of a man that I work with where he definitely had an avoidant attachment style and he became he was a compulsive masturbator. And so I helped him and look for other alternatives to lift him up. And he knew how to play the guitar, but he would hardly ever play it. So that was one thing. He played the guitar. And the other thing he did, he signed up for a stand-up comedy class. And he did that. It was very enriching and enlivening for him, really challenged him. He liked it, got him out there with people. So the guitar thing lifted him up more like a solitary thing. But then the stand-up comedy class was that. Now, that wasn't all we did, but it helped him. He just didn't have to do what he used to do. So it's easy to let go of addictions when you have other ways to regulate. You can't just take an addiction away and say, and don't do it. That's white knuckling it. But if you find ways to regulate and overcome those attachment style habits, then you're in a much better place to let go of addictions. Give them up. So I want to talk about that. Hopefully you find this useful. Thank you for listening. This is Todd Krieger, making the world safe. A lot.
That's it for today's episode of Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Krieger. For free resources and materials, head over to toddkrieger.com. Loved this episode? Head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.